Qué pena.
Good morning, teacher. My name is Brisa Merino, and my group is composed of Mateo Echeverría, Iskra, Vásquez, and Jorge Castillo. Today, we are going to talk about the narrative method. So, let's start. So, please, Mateo. So, first of all, what do you think is the narrative method? As we can see, this method is called in this way for a specific reason, because it tells something, like a story. And do you know what a story is like? Does it have an order, a sequence, or is it an order and we can tell a story from the end to the beginning? No, right? So it has a chronological order. Okay, so now we have two specific features of this method. But besides that, what does it tell? It tells an event, an action, or a series of events from the perspective of the subject or two subjects maximum. So, as we can see, please, Mateo, the next slide. The narrative method is a specific type of qualitative design in which narrative is understood as the spoken or writing text of a chronologically connected event, action, or series of events.
Okay, in this part, I'm gonna explain the characteristics of narrative method. Narrative research seek to understand the experiences of an individual or a character. There are six major characteristics are essential in if you want to make a narrative research. The first one is individual experiences. In this characteristic, try to understand an individual story to explain the impact on the future in the present. Chronological of the experiences. It deals with the time, the sequences of the chronological of events. The next is collecting individual stories. The stories can be acquired throughout interviews, informal observations, conversations, journal, and things like that. The next, please. Um, restoring. Restoring tries with the process of gathering or the stories, reviewing for key elements, for example, the place, time, scene, coding for themes or categories for themes. Data can be organized into themes or categories about 5 to 7 themes are identified and they can be incorporated or separated in sections. And the last characteristic is context or setting. This tries with describing in detail the place where the story physically occurs or happens. That is all.
Okay, in this part, we have three different types of narrative. Okay, the number one is topical histories. This is a normal history. We have a specific time, a plot, characters, and settings. For example, a research participants answer to a single interview questions. The second is personal narrative. It's a long interview or a series of long narrative interviews that give an extended account of someone's life. Okay? For example, a researcher conduct an in-depth interview or a series of in-depth interview with an individual over an extended period of time. And finally, we have inter-life history. It's a construct from a collection of interview, observation, and documents about a personal life. For example, a historian putting together the biography of someone's life from past artifacts.
Okay, so I'm going to teach you how to work with this narrative method. It can be sometimes difficult to know what to do because it's like too general, the information. And yeah, collect someone's story can be hard, and especially if you're trying to put it in a scientific way. So first you need to do these four things. Like this is the whole process, like from a big point of view, you know. So first you need to choose your type of narrative. Then you're going to uh, capture the narrative data. You're going to transcribe this data, and finally you're going to process this data. So I'm going to explain you what are these steps about. So you need to choose your type of narrative. You, as Iskra says, we have these three types of narrative. We have the topical, the personal, and the entire life. So, like she said, the topical is just going to be like this story about a specific moment, like you see in that picture about the Apollo 11. So this is just that time, you know, that story. It's going to have its characters. It's going to have its scenario. It's going to have a lot of things, you know, but it's not going to see, for example, the people's life or sometimes almost the variables that the persons introduce into the story. Like, for example, what happens in their house. No, it's going just to focus in that story. The personal narrative, it's a little more easier, I think, because all the story is about people, a person life story that he is going to tell you. Like for example, the one in Nelson Mandela, he is telling you about his life. So it's like his life from his point of view. And the other one, the entire life story, is more like something you do about the story of a person, but you're not doing just by his opinion. You do it more like all the information that you can get. For example, in Vincent Van Gogh, and especially my favorite, is about his life, but from the point of view of his brother, because all that we know about his life, it's grading on the letters that his brother used to send him. So you have to choose your type of narrative. Why? Because you can just be missing around there, which one can work here and one another one can work there. No, you have to be specific what you're trying to do. Are you going to talk about just a specific story? Do it. Are you going to talk about an entire life story? Focus on that. Choose one. Don't be confused. And capture narrative data. Okay, you can pause the video if you need to read. Okay, so what I mean with capturing narrative data. When you're doing this narrative method, you need to do some questions to the persons or the persons that you are going to interview, so you get the most information that you can find. Because this is a qualitative research, you're going to be very, very careful with the questions that you do. If you don't ask too many questions or questions too like too irrelevant, the whole story is not going to appear. But if you ask too many questions, like here in the meme on Fry, the person is going to be like suspicious about it. Like, why this person asked me too many questions? Why I have to answer that? Maybe if you ask too many questions, the true feelings of this story are not going to appear. So you have to be very, very careful when you listen to the story and you ask questions about the story. Okay. Next we have the transcribing narrative data, and this is something very easy. Like it says, write down all the things. All the things. If the person's in some kind of the story doubt, like it says like I don't know, you have to write it. Why? Because all these things shows the feelings of the person at the moment of telling this story. If he doubts, maybe it can mean something to the story. If he is like kind of enthusiastic at the moment of telling the story, it also can mean how he felt in that situation. So you have to be very careful when you transcribe this narrative data, because you're not just simply taking the words and putting it into paper. No, you're trying to take the emotions and transmit it to all the readers. That's what you have to be careful about. Oh, and finally, the processed narrative data. So this narrative data, it's focused especially in that is also narrative data is very useful to prove a theory, but prove a theory almost on your own because you're not experimenting. You are trying to see someone's point of view about the things that you are researching. That is why it's so useful for you. If you need an argument to prove that something you say is very good. If you want to maybe see the contrast about the things you say, a person's life can be very useful also. But you have to be very careful because narrative data can be sometimes like useful in this kind of ways, but can also be a waste of time because you can just put it like a story, like you're reading like a tale, and don't like add information to the scientific research, and it can be almost useless. So you have to be very careful about this data. Okay, so that's how you use this narrative method. I hope you like it, and that's all. Thank you.